Hi. I know I've been away for a while because I've been working on a project where I've been trying to teach myself how to build AI into applications. The project I've been working on has led me to learn quite a bit about how to do it and how to do it right. And that's what I'll be discussing in the video today. If you're a UX designer and you're trying to figure out how to build AI into your applications, this will be an extremely useful video for you. So let's get started. Firstly, before I started working on the project, I had to choose what the project was going to be. And I've heard a lot of people say that if you can automate any part of your daily tasks, you should. And that's where I started. But I also gave myself an additional criteria, and I tried to pick the task that I found the most challenging as well. Because the barrier created by the challenge is what prevents you from doing something. I find social media to be a huge challenge, and it meets both these criteria. I know I got to do it because it's extremely valuable. It's an essential skill to have today for creating opportunities, for creating collaborations. But I find it really difficult to have to create these posts, and then the physical job of actually going to each website and posting it around these networks that I'm a part of is tedious. But not only that, there's the bit where I need to modify the language to suit the specific networks, and that is really hard. So this prevents me from doing it as much as I would have normally enjoyed doing it otherwise. This is the part that I find to be the barrier. So that became the perfect definition of what the application should do. Alright, so I got started working on this application, and this is lesson 1, choosing the right tool. So I got Cursor because a lot of people said that this is the tool to use, and I used it before and I found it to be useful as well. But I also got myself other tools like Windsurf, and I tested it out, and I found that to be a better tool in the long run for me. Cursor is great out of the box. You get to be productive and you get really accurate, more accurate results right out of the box. But Windsurf has the memory feature. I know Cursor does too, but Windsurf was the first one that developed this memory feature that actually kept track of what your project was about. And I found that in the long run, when you start working on a new feature, it keeps in mind what came before and actually helps build things that you don't have to sit and fix as much as you do in Cursor. So that was one major learning for me. Choosing the right tool makes a lot of difference. The second lesson is actually about choosing the right AI model. Now within Cursor and Windsurf, you are able to choose which AI model you want to work with. And depending on which model you choose, there are different charges. Like using Claude Opus 4.1, actually I think it's 2x the regular credits. So for every prompt or any feature request, you're going to pay twice the amount as opposed to any of the other models. So one is normally tempted to choose the lowest price model in order to get tasks done quickly, and you have to spend less, and the usage statistics are always in your face. So there's a temptation to actually try and optimize for the spend. But I found that using lower end models, actually you end up spending a lot more time overall trying to fix the problems that you wouldn't find with a better model. So it was a very quick lesson for me where I stopped using anything but the best out there and saved myself a ton of effort in having to redo parts of the project. So that's my recommendation as well. So that's for the chat interface and where you're asking for new features to be built. But if you're doing tab completions like in the coding interface, there you might want to choose a faster tool like Kimi K2, and it's incredibly good. That's what I would recommend, that you save yourself a lot of time and effort and just work with the best tool out there. If you're philosophically not aligned to using closed source models like Claude or anything like that, then choose the best open source model that you could possibly choose and work with that. So like DeepSeek or what have you. People swear by Gemini as well as the OpenAI GPT's models, but I haven't found them to be as good as Claude. I hope to change my mind in the future, but currently this is my opinion as of today. So when I started designing the application itself, I was tempted to start with a chat interface, like everybody does. So I had that become the front and center for the application, and I imagined I would go in and type in any request that I had into that interface and have it be performed. The theory works well to a certain degree, but I think there are two downsides to this. One, typing out a message to do some basic tasks are incredibly inefficient when you can just solve that problem by clicking a button, right? There's a reason there are light switches even today, even though a lot of smart home technologies exist. And that should tell you something, that there are certain actions which are actually incredibly easy to do with physical switches, as opposed to pulling out your phone, launching the application, and then requesting some light to be turned on. So in a very similar way, typing in generate image is much worse than actually clicking a button which generates the image for you. So there are use cases that you should be careful with. You should look at all the use cases that you have and then choose the interface that serves that purpose. So what I found is the coexistence of the chat interface along with the buttons is actually the best option. The second downside, of course, is the discovery of the functions available to the user. So in a general purpose application like ChatGPT or any other answering service like Perplexity, the user can type in any kind of question and get an answer for it, right? So the definition of what functions are possible is pretty clear to the user right there. But if you're infusing AI within an application, the user needs to know what kinds of functions are available to them. Otherwise, it's just a matter of a lot of testing and failing for the user in order to realize what is possible and what isn't. And that's been one of the biggest failures for Siri or a Google Assistant or things like that, because people would ask it to do anything and it really was capable of only certain functions, and that wasn't possible for people to understand. So discovery is a huge hurdle. So in those kind of situations, surfacing a button is just as convenient to the user than to provide a chat interface. Let's move on to the next lesson, lesson 4, embracing iteration. I think one of the lessons that you learn very quickly is that you ought to design your workflow for iterations. So AI tools for coding make it incredibly easy for you to test out new ideas. To test out, let's say I want toggle switches instead of checkboxes. I can easily do that and try it out and see that this one works and this one doesn't. And I was able to do that because I had set up my system for being able to go back and forth. And I did that by utilizing GitHub to check in my code and make sure that I have a working version, after which I could, alter it and try out a bunch of things. And if it didn't work, I could revert back to this particular version if I wanted. So make sure you set up your workflows in such a way that you are built for going through these various iterations. And definitely utilize the remarking mechanism in GitHub to make sure that you're recording all the notes in a very detailed manner. Don't do it in a very cursory way, because the remarks are going to be extremely important for you to be able to go to a different point in the version history. Let's spend some time talking about the non-design aspects and some lessons that I've learned in that. Firstly, the evolution of coding skills. I think it's extremely important to notice that people keep saying coding is important, learning to code is extremely important, but I think they are often coders who say this, and they don't realize how hard it is to learn to code in the first place. I would want to revise that statement. I would want to say that it's extremely important to learn how to read code, which is a far easier task than learning how to write code. And it's also extremely important to learn algorithms, so the logic of how an application needs to function. It needs to do this step first, it needs to do this next, and so on, right? So understanding the algorithms, the logic of how an application works is actually much more important than learning to code, because the AI tools are getting really good at coding itself. I used to be a developer a long time ago, but I fell out of love with coding because to me, the language and syntax and getting these things extremely right got in the way of actually producing the application that I wanted to produce in order to use it in everyday life. So I stuck to the design side of applications because I could imagine what I wanted to do and stay in that realm and have the coding be done by people who loved coding. However, today with the AI coding tools like Windsurf and Cursor and Claude and what have you, the task of writing the code is no longer something that prevents me from creating applications. I can describe my code in English, which I think it was the gold standard of all programming languages always. So we're there now. So I can actually get back into creating applications. That's been my delightful surprise that I can actually get back into creating applications now. In fact, in Move 37, I think I wrote about 3 to 5% of the entire code. Majority of it was actually written by the AI itself. I can hear all the programmers saying this is going to be terrible code. This is going to be code that you're going to have to rewrite all over again. But I think that conversation is missing a big part, which is the incredible satisfaction that I felt in being able to see this application come alive and be in a functional state. That itself is a huge achievement. Yes, I'm going to have to refactor things and I'm going to have to rewrite a lot of the code tomorrow, but I have a functioning application today, and that's amazing. That's an incredible value in itself, right? So, and I'm sure the tools, AI coding tools, are going to get to a place where they can actually do this revision of code in a very efficient manner also in the future. So I'm not going to prevent myself from using these tools to create applications today, especially if I'm the only consumer of it. That actually is the next lesson as well. I can be a solo developer as well as a solo consumer. I think for the first time ever, we are in a place where we can actually develop applications with a target audience of one, which has always been the bar for the software world, right? How do you serve the needs of every single person? So we're there today. I think I spent about 80 to 100 euro in total for all the subscriptions that I had to use in order to create this application for myself. This is an amount I would have happily spent if I was using a third-party service to do the same exact tasks. But the problem was that I couldn't find a third-party service that could do all the things that I wanted to do. One very simple example is that I also use the Lens protocol for some of the social media postings over there. There isn't one application, one social media service out there which actually also includes the Lens protocol. So this is something that I had to either think of sacrificing or go and do that task manually. After posting with all the other channels, I would have to go and do this specifically in a manual way. Now that's time that I really didn't want to spend, right? I already told you that these are the kind of challenges that was getting in the way of my actually getting into social media. So here is a situation where I could create an application specifically to meet my needs and only my needs, and I didn't have to worry about anything else. And I was able to do it for roughly the same amount of money that I would have spent anywhere else. Yes, I spent a lot of time and effort building this application, but I learned a lot doing it, and my entire exercise was to teach myself all these things in the first place. But thinking about this, my head went into a space where I started wondering about what qualities are going to help us succeed in the future. Because if you can imagine an application, you can make it happen. You can create it immediately. Yes, today, I'm benefiting from the fact that I had a development background, being a programmer, that those parts played a role in my being able to produce these applications. But we're going to get to a place, it is inevitable that we'll get to a place where anybody, even without programming, a sense for programming, can actually create applications. So in that world, what is it that's going to help differentiate one application from another? And I think there are two things. I think the first quality is taste. The perspectives that you bring to the design of your application, not just the aesthetics, but your perspectives on how you want your application to function. That is going to be an extremely important differentiator between various applications. The functionality of the application is not the differentiating factor anymore. So while a lot of people say, UX designers are going to be a dying breed, I think while the title might not continue to exist, I think the learnings that we had as UX designers is going to play an incredible role going forward, because we bring our perspectives and tastes and values into the design of the application. At least we have that skill in how to make that happen. So that's going to be extremely important going forward. But the fact that we can actually produce so many applications is also going to bring about a frequency, like a trend. Trends are going to come in, and it's going to be faster and faster cycles. So even just like in the fashion world, what's cool, what's not, keeps changing. And I think that kind of a quality is going to play into the application world as well. There are going to be trendsetters, obviously, like everywhere else. So if you're not a trendsetter, then you're going to be somebody who's going to have to be able to spot these trends very quickly, build them into your applications as quickly as possible, and release them. I think that's the other quality that's going to help you succeed. The final lesson was about the pyramid of attention. This was a lesson that I learned a long time ago when I had my own agency. So in my agency, we had various teams and each team would handle a particular project. And one of the things that I did was to actually make sure that every team's output was reviewed by me, right? So this was to maintain quality, but also I had a certain way of doing something, and I wanted to make sure that every application would adhere to that. These aren't qualities that you can explain, but if you saw an application developed by my agency, you could tell the difference between that and something else that another agency would develop. And that was a very conscious effort there. So, but coming back to talking about the teams, I would spend a lot of time reviewing the work that these teams would output. And what I noticed was if the team is inexperienced, I would spend the same amount of time doing the reviews, but getting them from, let's say the 50% mark to the 75% mark. Whereas if I was dealing with a strong team, somebody who had experience, I'd be talking about getting them from the 90% to the 100% mark. Same amount of time, right? Another way of saying the same thing is that if you've got a stronger team, you can actually focus on the higher level qualities, so the up the pyramid. But if you've got a weak team, you'll be focusing on fixing the basics, and you're spending the same amount of time. Today, we have these AI tools that are allowing us to not worry about the basics, about writing the code, the syntax, getting all those things right. They'll write their functions. They're very good at that. What we have now is the ability to free ourselves up and think about the next level of things. How to be surprising, how to improve recognition, when to utilize attention and grab attention, when not to. These are the truly human qualities that we get to focus on right now. The irony is in the fact that these AI tools are actually coming in to help us be more human with our applications and software design. And I think that's incredible. All right. I hope these lessons that I've learned have also been useful to you. And I invite you to come and have a discussion with me in the comments, or reach out to me on any of the social media that I'm now on. If you'd like to know more about Move 37 and would want to see a video where I talk to you about the features and show you some of it, I'd be happy to. Just leave me a comment. Apart from that, thank you so much for listening today, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Take care.